Hello, everyone. Ambassador Terry here with my good friend and colleague, John Chappelear, and we're talking about audience participation. Interesting subject. John, welcome. This is going to be fun.
Yes, thanks, Terry. I look forward to it. I mean, audience participation is one of those things that really changes the dynamic, both in training or in a keynote. I mean, depending on what you want to do. But if you don't have the audience participating, then they tend to be, down looking at their phones, or they are talking to each other, or sitting as far back as possible. All those little things that don't help you from a training standpoint or from a speaking standpoint.
Right on, right on. And, you know, live participating is a little bit different than obviously online stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And we're used to both.
Yes.
I find it interesting that the amount of the higher percentage of people that are on Zooms or whatever are doing stuff. They
Yeah.
get up and go get a cup of coffee
Oh,
and
sure.
whatever and
Absolutely.
sit down. You're on Zoom, you're on camera.
I know.
There's
I know.
let's think
I
let's
had a,
think this
I
through a little
was
bit.
having a conference the other day. I didn't mean to cut you off. I had a conference the other day with a woman, and all of a sudden her screen went white and it said Firefly across the front of it. And I had never seen that before. So once I got off talking to Firefly, about a half an hour later, I looked it up, and it's a program that you can put on instead of you, and it records the whole conversation and then sends you the highlights of the conversation, so you don't even have to be engaged in it. So I'm thinking, that's just great. What are the chances you will actually go back and listen to this and gather something from it? I mean, it's your reticular activating system up here only works a little teeny bit. So, the more you can contribute and participate, the deeper the information goes. But this superficial listening, I listen to it, doesn't really go in. It needs to. You need to work a little harder to make it go in. So,
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, I was having a recording about, my what are you doings
mhm,
one
mhm.
day, and the person I was recording started typing. She started typing on a keyboard and kind of lost me. She was talking,
Yeah,
just answering an email, like, "You're what?" And I clicked off recording, and I go, "This is
yeah,
recorded. This is going out across LinkedIn and
yeah.
Facebook. You understand that, right?"
Oh,
Oh, I forgot. Well, it says
yeah.
recording on the screen. So,
It
all
does, it
right.
does.
So let's start over. And
Yeah,
I'm glad we did because what she was talking about at the time really wasn't that good. But when I had her focused, wow,
mm,
it came out really, really nice.
yeah,
But I, a lot of times they just don't get it that they're really talking to an actual person
right.
and or persons, lots of people, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, it's really funny.
Yeah, it's
Um,
interesting what you were talking about just then, because it's one of those things that when I'm coaching somebody, I talk to them about the ways in which they talk to somebody one-on-one. Now I'm talking about one-on-one human conversations. Do you shuffle through your drawer looking for papers, or are you typing on? My example is, you're typing on the screen. The guy comes, the man or woman says, "Come on in, sit down, sit down." Yeah, yeah. Go ahead. Tell me what the issue is. You know, and so clearly what this is more important than whatever you're going to say. So you have to give the person the sense that what they're going to do is valued, or they're not going to come back. And it's the same thing. If you can't contribute to your attention to the person you're talking with, nothing you're talking about is really going to, like you said, once you got her to focus, what she contributed was so much more powerful than what she was trying to send to you when she was distracted. So
yeah,
I don't know, it just doesn't relate. I can't understand that, but I know I see people do it all the time.
yeah, yeah. But both of us are stage people. We
Yeah,
speak from the stage a lot. That's really what we do for a living almost. And uh, you know,
almost.
getting people to engage.
Right.
Um, sometimes is kind of complicated. You
Yeah.
know, one of the ones that I teach my clients when I'm teaching them to do presentations, start out easy. When you clearly see that the audience is not engaging you, grabbing their PDAs or whatever, just stop for a minute, go silent, and then they look up like, "Oh, does that make sense?" And then they look at each other.
What do you say?
What did you just do? You know, and you know, it's a simple question.
Yeah.
With a 97% positive response, because two things happen. You got them connected back, and they get to say yes out loud, right?
Yes.
So everybody got that. Does that make sense? Everybody, does that make sense? And then everybody speaks, you know. And through the presentation, I 3 to 5 times I have them do that so they remain engaged, because it also makes them feel more comfortable sitting where they're at. If they're sitting around a group of people they have no knowledge of, don't know them or anything like that, you're all saying yes at the same time, so you can kind of look at each other and smile. There's a
Right.
possibility of connect. So
Right.
what are some of the ways that you do that when you're up on stage?
Well, there are a number of things, you know, as you know, but some of the things I do to just encourage the audience to be up front is to lean the chairs up in the back 3 or 4 rows so that they look like they're reserved. And so it makes everybody come a little closer. Like you were talking about, sitting next to people you don't know. I encourage that. I can't demand it, but I encourage you to sit next to somebody you don't know. So you know, you learn from people that you just meet more than you do from the people that you talk to every day. So I encourage them to sit in places that they are not comfortable or not familiar, so we can sort of work through the concept of practice the uncomfortable and until it becomes comfortable. Um, but much of the stuff that I try to do is I'll either tell people ahead of time, I'm going to be asking some questions as we go through and I'm going to go through the process, whether it's a training process or a keynote speaker. Now, if it's a huge keynote, you know, a couple thousand people, you can't do that. You just, you know, you throw the things out like you were saying, well, that makes sense. You know, I do that all the time. Do you do that? And at least get them, you know, they're thinking, yes, I hope. But if it's a big audience, you can't. But if it's, you know, even a couple hundred people or smaller, you can definitely ask for more participation from the audience simply by asking questions. You know, I do this when I'm doing this. What situations do you do that in? And I have actually gone around the room ahead of time and handed people questions. Ask this question or answer this question when I ask this question. Then one person will stick their hand up and have an answer, and that leads to more people contributing too. Once the ice has been broken, you know, people are willing to do that. We've done things like beach ball, you know, beach balls at the old concerts where you pound the beach ball around. I've had beach balls popped around, you know, all over the room. And anytime you grab it, you got to give me a contribution to the talk. I have a thing I call a lack of communication, which works just as well virtually as it does in person, which is take a piece of paper and fold it. And so what I say is, okay, you know, I'm the boss giving you directions. Okay. And so your job is to do what I'm telling you to do, not to ask any questions. Okay. Because that's what I would expect. So take the piece of paper and fold it in half. And people are like, well, which way is half? I'm like, no questions, no questions. So people fold it in half. Okay, fold it again. Okay, tear off the top left corner. You know, tear off the bottom right corner. Okay, fold it again. Tear off the only corner that's not torn off yet. Okay, now, if everybody's listened to exactly what I've had to say, what I want you to do is open your piece of paper and show it to me, because they should all be exactly the same. And of course, they open up the paper and it doesn't have any semblance to nobody's is the same. And people have fun. They take the piece of paper and if they have 2 holes, they take the piece of paper and hold it. It's just natural that they show each other the paper. They do it on their face. They wave it at me to see what so I do that, especially if I'm running into a scene where I'm thinking they're drifting away. Okay, let's talk about communication. And so that really helps a lot with audience participation. But this one of the simplest things I have found that keeps it going is, like I said earlier, which is to tell the people ahead of time, I'm going to ask questions. And I'm going to ask specific questions. And sometimes I ask people who would be comfortable answering questions. And a few, little hands go up, and I go, okay, we'll be calling on you guys, and then I'm going to ask the rest of you to contribute to that answer. So if you help them understand what's coming, sometimes they're more comfortable with doing that. But I have always liked I actually have a video of that if you ever see it, the paper tearing exercise. So it's fun.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, that's really fun. You brought to mind one time when I went to a rather large meeting, and they did one step farther. Instead of putting the chairs up, they took out 10 rows. They had meeting staff there to put them back.
Right.
And later I asked the person who was in charge, the host of the meeting, and she said, I put up 3/4 of the amount of chairs for the expected amount of people, so that when people walk in, the place is filling up and we're having to add chairs. They get engaged, like, this is important. There's a lot of people here.
Yeah.
I better get my seat right now instead of sitting in the back and wait to see how far back I can go. And she says she gets people right up there in the front filling in right away because they're going, oh my God, we're filling up. I better grab a seat, even if it's in the front row.
Right.
So I thought that was genius, and I held on.
Yeah, no, that's much better than tipping the chairs up.
Yeah, because a lot of people just tip down the chair and sit down. Yeah,
well, some
but
people definitely do that. I mean, it's just like high school. Everybody wants to go to the back row on the outside, and the more confrontational the audience. Like, if this is dealing with conflict and confrontation in the office, what usually happens is the people who create the conflict and confrontation are the ones that have been sent to this workshop. So right in the back of the room, and arms crossed. And about profiling, kind of thing, arms crossed. And it's just like, teach me something. You can't teach me anything. So it's just, you've got to be able to make the people feel as if what they can do here is valuable. And not only it's not going to necessarily be valuable to me because I'm the teacher, but it could very much be valuable to the people who are sitting next to you or around you that have never thought of this idea before. So once they begin to think, oh, well, I could help, and if they feel that way, then they'll be more comfortable, raising their hand or speaking up, or, I try to make sure it's sort of controlled chaos. You don't have to raise your hands. You can just yell out. It's not like I usually say, this is not a recording. I don't have to start over at the beginning again if you interrupt me. So please, please feel free to be as chaotically inclusive as you want to be.
Very good. Very good. I was at a Lions meeting once where they had an international person as a guest speaker. And so they had a couple of 3 clubs together. It was quite a few people. And he did something that I thought was genius. He walked up to the front and his alarm on his phone went off. And he pulls out his phone and he turns off the alarm and he says, oh, I forgot to turn off my phone so I can listen to the speaker. I better turn off my phone right now. What about you guys? Did you turn off your phones? Yeah. People are scrambling. What? I just thought that was genius, because everybody in the room can hear that alarm going off, right?
Yes, they can. Yes, they can. You and I know about gifts of devastation. I've said to people, there are big ones like heart attacks, and then there are little ones like you forgot to turn your phone off in a conference, and you're the guy who has to turn your phone off, and everybody around you pulls their phone out immediately and start turning them off. So, it's sometimes I have to be embarrassed to make sure that somebody else learns the lesson, but it's very interesting how you can get audiences participating. I watched the guy once walk out on stage, very comfortably, and reach in his coat pocket and pull out a cigarette and put it in his mouth and then take out a lighter And then he looks around the audience, and of course you're hearing a lot of this mumbling going on. And he's like, what, kind of thing. And he does 2 or 3 other things like that, and this is right at the very beginning of the talk. And so it's fun to see the techniques that people use, because audience participation, or at least engagement, is so critical to what the goal of the talk or the training is to get the information, from here or from the workbook or from something into the brains and maybe even the hearts of the people before they get out of there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Make it fun to be there. Make it fun to be there.
Exactly. The audible part of that is one thing. If everybody has a workbook, are they actually in that workbook? Is there a pen out, or are they just following along?
Right.
And so what I like to do is, if I've got workbooks there, I will check setting every so often. Excuse me, ma'am or sir, what'd you just write on the last response? Do you mind sharing it with everybody?
Oh, I'm supposed to write that down.
Well, I'm still formulating that. Maybe somebody else would like to respond. That person starts writing from that point on.
Yeah.
Especially if you say, okay, well, I can check back with you. Okay, it puts them on the spot, because a lot of people, they're not rude necessarily. They're just not psychologically connected,
Right.
And once the connection is there, and the person is, and everybody in the audience are aware that the person in the front, who's giving this speech or presentation or whatever, they're in control. And if you start floating off, you're going to pay the price. Or the people at the back of the room who stand with their phones at the ready, kind of listening to you, but responding to chats or whatever on their phones.
Right.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is rude to the nth degree.
Right.
Rude to the nth degree, particularly if you paid money to come into this room.
Right.
What are you doing? You've just created an expense for your business account instead of an investment on the possible future returns.
Right.
Let's talk business about this. When you're fully engaged and professional, people notice.
Right.
And people like to talk to the pros. Okay.
Yes.
If you're just out there just floating around doing your thing, probably nobody in the room's going to come up to you unless they know you.
Right. Right.
All right.
That's another thing I do from time to time, depending on the size of the audience, the makeup of the way the audience is structured. If it's rounds, maybe 10 rounds of 10 kind of thing, I'll go to a table and actually introduce myself. Hi, I'm John. I'm the speaker. I'll be talking about blah, 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 and you are so-and-so. I'm Gwen. I'm Jimmy. And so that connection all of a sudden changes it from, I never heard of this guy before, to we were just talking before the speech went off, or right before the workshop. So it's, the more that, and again, it's like the leadership stuff I teach. It's a lot harder to teach engaged and inclusive leadership than it is bossy leadership. I mean, it takes a lot more work to learn about the people, to find out what makes them motivated and what demotivates them, and then practice doing that in your leadership style rather than just go do this, because I told you to do this. I pay you for this stuff. You should just get it done. It's harder to be a speaker and engage, especially these days, and engage people. It's just, I have 2 grandsons, one that just graduated from high school and one that's a rising senior. And they spent 2 years on virtual school, 2 years. And, during COVID. So it was just like, one was in 9th grade, I think, and rising to 10th, and one was in 7th grade. And so this is something that you got to learn or you won't pass. You will get a bad grade. One kid was in the National Honor Society. Another kid needed a particular grade average to stay on a sports team. And it was, even with that kind of pressure, it was very hard for them to pay attention in a virtual environment. With their mother standing, right behind them.
Yeah.
But You know, it's just, we create so many distractions, and we have sort of raised our distraction level to such a height because we try to think that we can do more than one thing at a time. And I can listen to you and make some notes, or I can listen to you and text something. And you can't. I mean, doing multiple tasks at the same time is really sort of a false positive. You can't really do it. Something or both or all three or however many you're trying to do is going to suffer because you can't give 100%. And really, if you want to learn something, it's got to be 100%. It can't be, well, I paid attention most of the time. You just can't. You've really got to, the speaker has got to contribute 100% of the time. And if you're trying to learn, then you do too. And before I ramble through the whole talk here, the other thing that I do with people is I ask them who are department heads in this group, and whoever raises their hand, I said, okay, what I want you to remember is what you'll need to do to show the value of this workshop or this talk is what I want you to do is make sure you have enough notes that you can go back and teach this to the people in your department tomorrow, because it'll be fresh in your mind. You'll have your notes, go back. What was the value of what you learned today? And if you get them that engaged, all of a sudden you've got 10 people or so out of a group of 50 or 100 that are actively listening and actively notes. And of course, that means the people sitting near them begin to create a sense of guilt. Well, maybe I should be making some notes too. So any way I can get them to pay attention, I get them to pay attention.
Yeah, I think just as we wrap this up, I want to reiterate, the speaker at the front of the room, and you and I both taught on this, is take some time to talk to people, get some perspective about why they're here at the presentation, and so you can kind of include them into your presentation. For instance, blah 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 blah, and you look at the person that you're about to talk about without saying their name. And for instance, blah blah blah, and I were talking about this and subject, and I think this comes in really close right here. They just got validated, even though you didn't say their name necessarily. Right.
Yeah.
That, wow, this guy wasn't just chatting with me; he was paying attention. I like that. Right. They're much more likely to engage you after the presentation. Right. So
let me say one more thing. Oh, well, no, I'll just do this. I went and did a 5-day workshop for a client overseas, and it was return on investment. That's what we were talking about. I was watching the audience the first 20 minutes or so, and I said, well, clearly this is not intriguing anyone at all. What's the biggest problem that you currently have in your department, so that maybe we can guide this workshop around? I had them write it down on a piece of paper and hand it up. And I looked through the thing, and every single one of them said, my biggest problem is my boss, not my return on investment. So I said, okay, this was a big binder, 5 days worth of binder. I said, turn it upside down and open it backwards. And let's start writing on the blank piece of paper on the back. And we'll be spending the next 5 days talking about how to get what you need done through a leadership that's sort of adversarial to you. How do you break that down? How do you become better engaged? And that was, I don't know, 5 years ago, and I still get emails about, thank you so much for doing that, because that's what we needed. We already knew about returns on investment, but my boss just stifled this or did that, and you gave me 100 ideas about how to get that through. So you're absolutely on target. The more that you can show up and prove the fact that what they need, you're going to contribute, the better they're going to pay attention.
Absolutely. What a great way to end this. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you got a lot out of it. Reach out to us. We would be happy to engage you in the chats and the comments below. And thanks again for